Welcome to the AI Chat podcast. I'm your host, Jaden Schaefer. Today on the podcast, I have the pleasure of being joined with Prashant Gulati, who is the SVP of Strategy at App Orchid AI. This is a front runner in the enterprise AI space and leveraging over 20 years of experience in tech and the automotive sector. Before this, he was pivotal at Faraday Future, co-leading their IPO and spearheading the creation of the groundbreaking general AI product stack for vehicles. So he's recognized by Business Insider as a top VE industry power player. And Prashant's insights have been featured in, AI Magazine, EV Magazine, and a bunch of other big publications. So we're super excited. Welcome to the show today.
Jaden, really excited about being here. Thank you for inviting me, and many congratulations for your 1 million plus downloads. I think it was a milestone a few months ago. I appreciate what you've done over this year. I have learned tremendously from your interviews, from the stories, from the analysis you share. So again, thank you for having me, and very much looking forward to our conversation today.
Have you ever wanted to start your own podcast? I record and publish podcasts on a platform called Spotify for Podcasters, and I absolutely love it. Essentially, you can upload from your phone or computer, and it distributes to every platform that plays podcasts. They support video podcasts, and you can make money on the platform with ads or even podcast subscriptions, something that has made my life so much easier as a podcaster. So if you're interested, I highly recommend you give it a try. You can download the Spotify for Podcast app, or go to spotify.com/podcasters to get started on your podcast today. Well, happy that you are listening and getting a lot of the podcast. And yeah, it's been an absolute whirlwind of a ride. As I mentioned, I'm excited to have you on. And what I kind of wanted to kick this off with is I'm wondering if you can describe a little bit about your journey. Tell us a little bit about what led you from, you were in the automotive industry and now you're, becoming an AI executive. Tell us a little bit about your journey there.
Yeah, I think so. Great point. And, even before I joined, I was at Faraday Future, like you mentioned, right? Faraday is an electric car company. The vision is much bigger than just building electric cars. But I before I talk about my transition from automotive to AI, let me just talk to you about how I got into electric cars in the first place, right?
Yes, please.
You'll see all roads. So about 7.5 years ago, in early 2016, my wife and I were about to have our first child, right? So at that time, we had this heightened sense of, what kind of world is our child going to grow up in, right? What kind of legacy are we going to leave for him, etc. So, we started to think about, wanting to make a real difference to shape the future as much as possible for our generations. And climate change and artificial intelligence were kind of top of our minds. Like, these are the defining problems and opportunities, right? AI was still not as hot as it is today, right? I mean, we used to talk about, Netflix is doing machine learning recommendation systems and stuff. So that was kind of AI or spam detection. But I looked at a few opportunities in renewables, energy storage, and a bunch of places, then clicked with Faraday. The mission of the company, the vision of the company was very bold to transform the future of mobility, and it kind of aligned with my values of sustainability also. So I decided to make the shift, joined them in 2016. Over a 7-year period, did almost everything you can think of doing in a car company other than write code, right? So it was a tremendous learning experience, building a car, launching a car. We did it earlier this year. It's a fantastic product. Then I did not have an automotive background, and people were just generous in sharing their learnings, and I was quite open to learning and doing a lot of cool things there. But one of the things that I did at Faraday was I took the initiative to help FF lead in the generative AI space, right, in automotive. So and I can talk more details later, but some of the work that I did helped FF become the first car company in the world to show generative AI in the car, right? Nobody else has done it. So except Mercedes now, nobody else in the world has done it. And so that was super exciting for me, like just being deep down, going back to my roots in software, being deep down in technology. And as I thought a little bit more, I went back to my motivation into coming into electric cars was to shape the future for our kids, right? For the most part. And there's just, same thing is happening here, like with AI and especially with generative AI. There's just so much happening. And I, wanted to, like I said, shape the to the best of my abilities, the future that our kids are going to grow up in. And in doing that research, I ended up coming across App Orchid. I've known the company for quite some time, been a investor also as a limited partner through a point. And the company is doing just unbelievable work in helping, not just people in boardrooms, but people on the front line. So somebody who has to, the lineman who has to climb a utility pole. Like if you think about when we talk about AI or a lot of this press that nobody cares about, and not, there isn't enough as much conversation about impact of AI for people on the front lines, right?
Yeah.
The healthcare worker, on a teacher, on a lot of that. So we do a lot of work. We help companies help their people on the front line. So scientists in a lab who is doing drug discovery is something we do. We work with a lot of utilities, etc. So I'm very, very, very excited. Very grateful for all of them learning, and for what the company is doing. So that's a little bit of it's not been very planned, but I found interesting opportunities, and I think it's kind of all aligned with my mission and vision in life. So that's
I love it. Absolutely incredible journey, and I always love hearing that because that gives me so much context about where you come from and what you're building and your motivation behind this. I think that's such a great motivation to really leave the world a better place for your kids. And it's fascinating, adding AI as being the first place to really add generative AI into automotive is super cool, super forward thinking and exciting of you. Something I want to get into App Orchid a little bit and talk about what you're doing there. But first, I wanted to ask you, maybe what was one of the most challenging aspects of co-leading the IPO process for Faraday Futures?
Yeah. So, I mean, building cars is a difficult, complex, regulated, capital-intensive business, right? I mean, that's just the reality of car business today, and which is probably why you've seen, I think Elon has spoken enough times about this, like Tesla and Ford are the only two car companies in the US that have not sort of gone bankrupt so far. And so it's a difficult business, and the amount of capital that's needed is generally only available in the public markets, right? So we always had, to your point about the IPO, we always had plans to go public, right? But those plans kind of got affected by COVID, right? And so not prepared for COVID. We were getting ready, like, there's a lot of, at least an year and a half of work that you have to do before you start to go IPO, right? There's between 12 months at least. So you have to get your processes ready, your statements, and IT controls, etc. So there's just a ton of work that has to go. And then COVID happened, right? And so we suddenly had to find this balance of how do we keep our people safe, right? To at the same time, for a car company, you want investors to come see the car, right? How great this is. Yeah. It's real, and the technology is real. The people are, experienced, and see the manufacturing plant where we're going to build. So it was very difficult to make that happen, to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to build cars during COVID. And so it was, just for our team, for me, like it was a intense experience, like working 80, 20 hours a day for road shows, for negotiations, for diligence, right? So it was time consuming, but ultimately very rewarding. So we ended up listing in 2021 through a SPAC IPO process. We listed on NASDAQ. I co-led the process, like you mentioned also. We raised $1 billion. We were completely oversubscribed. We had to turn away investors, right? So it was a good problem.
Wow.
So it was, just raising money, keeping it all together, doing it remotely, for the most part. COVID was very difficult. But it kind of worked out. You can't build cars remotely, unfortunately. So it was very fascinating. And if I can maybe, having done this now 2 or 3 times, like one of the things I do at App Orchid is I am deep dive into technology, right? Of building a lot of use cases, working with a lot of clients, but also corporate development, which means part of it is fundraising, etc. And having done this a few times, there's like a couple of things that I'm sure your listeners wouldn't mind hearing is, one of the things that I've seen enough times is, a lot of fundraising discussions happen around economics and control, right? Yeah. And these are very emotional topics. And I've seen the best people in the world get carried away. So, to the extent possible, try not to be emotional about it. Be passionate, be convinced about your vision, but, try not to be emotional about this. The second thing is, timing. like somebody said, you should fix your roof before it is raining, right? So try money before you need it, ideally. And that's one of the things that we kind of learned in hindsight for us. And the third and final point is about accountability, right? You'll have access to bankers and lawyers and financial advisors, but and then they are experts, technical experts at problem solving, but ultimately the outcome of a process is your accountability. So be in control of the process is very, very important. So I would say.
I love that. That's incredible advice and incredible insights into just that whole experience, what you learned and what you saw. Something that I'd love to ask you about. So you're working there. Tell us a little bit about your transition, going from there to now being in App Orchid. What did that look like? How did you know it was time to make that, take that step?
Yeah, so I have now transitioned first from. I have a software background. I have a computer science background by education. So I've transitioned from software. Then I did my MBA from the Indian School of Business, which is I met my wife there. So talk about return on investment.
Okay.
So I used to be in software, then product management in software, then MBA, kind of moved to the business side of things. Did a lot of enterprise sales. Worked as a chief of staff to a CEO. At a company called KPIT. So moved from that software to business to electric cars. And then within, now I've transitioned to AI, right? And I kind of shared with you my motivations. I'm not afraid of change. I'm not afraid of, let's say, learning new things, right? And part of the reason is one of the common themes, as I have kind of switched careers enough times now, right, has been that I've found people have been more than you would expect generous in sharing their learnings, right? So when I was doing software, I ended up working with a guy who was compared to the likes of Larry Ellison, and the amount of stuff that I learned from him, just, what we call hackathons today, we used to do it, it's like sitting 20 hours a day in office. I used to sleep in office, right? So anyway, my point being that, if you, I think some of it was just happy accidents. I ended up working with really cool people, and they were very generous in in sharing their learning. So, just having that confidence that, you'll always be able to find people if you are well-meaning, if you're willing to put the work, right? You'll find the people to help, find the resources to help, right? So that was very helpful. Just talking about, let's say, App Orchid, like the transition to App Orchid and AI and automotive and in general. I want to contrast something for you. I mean, there's obviously a lot of for all the right reasons, investment also in AI, but I think we all know Mark Andreessen, right, kind of wrote this essay about, I want to say 12 years ago, 10 years ago, about software is eating the world, right? And then Jensen Huang said, Prof. NVIDIA, he said, AI is eating the software that's eating the world. This is 4 years ago. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've all seen how busy AI has been this year, right? And now you contrast it with automotive, right? And I'm saying software, we started to have this discussion a decade ago. AI in the last couple of years, especially with the whole shift to the transformer architecture and stuff. Do you think about this and you then compare this with what the CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, he said it in June of this year. He said Ford is literally learning to write software, automotive software, for the first time in their 100+ year history, right?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, not many people probably know this, and then Oliver Bloom, who is the new CEO of Volkswagen, kind of said the same thing. They are having delays or he attributed some of the delays in car launches to software. My point is, there's so much excitement and promise and what's happened in the past because of software and how it touches our lives every day. But there are these mature industries, companies that produce 8 to 10 million cars every day. Just between these two companies, like almost 10% of the world output. And they're saying we can't even do software. I mean, I'm not trying to oversimplify this. I mean, they've done great in terms of infotainment and software and stuff, but there are a lot of issues in interoperability of software, safety issues, standards and whatnot. So, and a lot of that is going to happen in AI also, right? In the sense that the cars are a different business completely, but you will see that even within AI, there's going to be a lot of polarizing topics. Like there's going to be a lot of advancements and stuff, but I've been through enough of these call it hype cycles and boom and bust cycles to know that what we're talking today is not going to be real. It's going to look very different 6 months, So, but I'm absolutely convinced that AI is going to just accelerate developments across industries. Some will be slow to adapt, some will be very fast, and that's one of the things we see at App Orchid. Every company we speak with, and we work with the likes of Fidelity and British Petroleum and Shell and a whole lot big companies, Fortune 500 companies. Everyone wants to understand how they can do leverage AI to have this competitive edge, improve efficiencies, reduce costs, just create new things, right? So it's a very, very fascinating time to be in this space.
Yeah, so interesting. I think it's incredible to hear a little bit about, how your experiences in the automotive sector helped with your approach with what you're doing today and how that's all shifting. With all of this that you're working on, I see you're definitely someone that has to make a lot of decisions on a day-to-day basis. And I would love to kind of ask you a little bit more about that. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about your approach to decision making.
Yeah. That's a good question. It's one of my favorite topics also. I was fascinated, completely blown away by this topic in the first place. In 2008, when I was doing my MBA, right, I learned that the whole structure of the airline industry, was transformed by two decisions, right? One was deregulation, and second was the hub and spoke model. Like, just think about this, right? For a 40-year impact on an entire industry worth hundreds of millions of dollars because of two decisions, right? And so I started to become very interested in, how do people make decisions? How do, regulators should be making decisions? How do policymakers should approach decisions? So I have done a lot of research, reading. I, teach some courses now on decision making and stuff. And just to give you an example of the work, right, in my work in strategy, it's a lot of expert generalist type work, meaning, you have to pick a new topic and kind of become an expert as early as soon as possible. So I had at Faraday, I had to lead a project on manufacturing, right? So, what's our manufacturing strategy going to be? Where are we going to build cars? How are we going to build cars? Who are we going to partner with, right? And these are irreversible type, hundreds of millions of dollars of commitments you make that you can't just go back out on, right? And not having any background in manufacturing or supply chain, right? I had to deliver this project in about 9 or 10 months, to avoid stuff. So, in a lot of the principles that I've learned over the years kind of came to play. One of the, to answer your question, how do I approach decision making? One is I look at the situation first. Is a reversible, irreversible type decision? Then if it is a reversible type decision that I can change later, that's something where I would optimize speed over analytics, right? If it's a irreversible type decision, then I'll spend the time, collect all of your information, think through the problem that you're trying to really solve, the consequences, intended, unintended consequences of it. So, obviously there's a lot of rigor that goes into thinking about that, making sure all stakeholders align. I've seen how surprisingly people rely too much on experience, right? And I've come to learn to use first principles, which basically means anything that you're trying to tackle, you boil it down to first principles, or the most basic truths that and I kind of build it from there, right? And there's a very interesting book called The Psychology of Intelligence Analysis, right? It's a manual that the CIA uses to train used to use to train their analysts, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. So check it out. I mean, and people listening to this, it's one of my favorite books. It's available for free online. And it's just I learned so much about it, and it's so important for their analysts will go, let's say spend time in different countries, different culture, different contexts. So the manual kind of talks to you about how do you separate your background, your assumptions from what the conclusions that you're going to recommend, right? It's really fascinating. So that was one of the things that I learned tremendously: separate your assumptions from your conclusions and stuff. Yeah, and so that's how I approached it. And then you obviously have a lot of financial tools now, right? And especially for the big ones, you use your net present value and what have you. And AI is just helping so much in all that analysis these days. So and then you keep testing. I mean, no decisions. Not always will you have a perfect record. Just keep evaluating, keep testing. How things change, what changes. So keep going back and evaluating the decisions. How I would.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's such a powerful approach, and I really appreciate you sharing that book as well. I think that's something I'll probably go and check and read myself. Something I would love to hear a little bit more from you now is, of course, you're now working at App Orchid AI. I'm wondering, what is like kind of their unique value proposition for mission critical applications?
Right. So there's a good chance, let's say if you are a water utility customer or, and if you had a problem when you called and, you would have called our platform, but we kind of stay in the background, right? So we help our customers. So, in today's business, right, everybody wants actionable insights. People want to get to decisions. We were just talking about decision making, right? But that path from data to decisions is not always linear, right? I mean, it's complex. You will have data in different systems, in different countries, in different subsidiaries. So you have, data is sometimes an issue. Then, implementations are complex, time consuming, costly, and especially now with LLMs and stuff, not always very reliable, right? So that's kind of the problem that we have right now. There's a lot of promise and opportunity, but some of these problems exist. So what App Orchid does, and they've been doing it, I only joined recently, a few months ago, but the company has been in business for about 9 years now. And what they've been doing for the last 9 years is they've been solving this problem one step at a time, right? So we do two things for customers, right? We generate insights and we generate analytics, right? Let me explain what that means. So if you're a company, we will come, to your data source. You don't have to move your data anywhere else, right? We will come to you. We are SOC 2 compliant, HIPAA compliant and everything. So data privacy is kind of guaranteed. We will come to you. We will build a knowledge graph from your data. And then once we build the knowledge graph, you can ask any question you want from your data, right? You want to know how many, let's say a car company, right? If which parts are failing, which suppliers are not turning around quickly enough, which parts should I be expecting, in the next few. So a lot of that question answering now you can do without creating dashboards. So you don't need data scientists to be hired, you don't need BI developers and all of that. So we solve that problem of analytics first. And then second is we do our own AI models about, for prediction, for optimization, for routing, for, a lot of machine learning problems, a lot of data science issues. And then now, obviously we try to be at the forefront of technology. So we're very focused on future technologies. Like we've already done a lot of work in LLMs and integrating with LLMs. But we're very focused on probabilistic programming and how that's going to help, So we're doing some, work in that regard. So with all this, I mean, our claim to fame is what companies take, let's say, 10 months to employ, we do it in 2, right? So that time to value is kind of our foot in the door. That's how we've also proven ourselves at, like, some of the clients I mentioned, BP, Shell, Fidelity, American Water. I mean, there are some of them we reduced. So their contract negotiation time is down from 80 days down to 8 days, right? Just imagine the amount of time and money saved.
Yeah. That's amazing. Very, very cool. So sounds like you're doing some pretty impressive things today with App Orchid and in that whole space, and some obvious massive time savings and help for companies. Something, with all of this innovation that you're working with, before and now, something I would love to ask you is, what are some AI innovations that you are the most excited about that you've seen over the last year?
Right. So, obviously it's an evolving space and there's so much happening. And like I've been through this bus cycle, with either not bus, but a lot of this hype cycle with electric cars in the past. Excuse me. What I have seen in kind of one of the most exciting things has been generative AI, obviously, right, and how it democratizes access to the benefits of AI and of technology to people. To learn a lot about this, I obviously go on Twitter. I come to your podcast. There's a website called aichimes.com, right, that I learned a lot from. Like it's right stuff for you to read and learn from. So generative AI is very exciting and how it puts the power in the hands of creators, right? Individual creators. We are some of the other technology, like there's been some effort now on reducing cost and complexity and improving the reliability of LLM. So that's interesting for me. For us, especially in the enterprise AI space, we're just doing a lot of we are just very encouraged by how open companies are to exploring this, right? It's not just an experiment for a lot of companies anymore. There's a real need for, there's almost this fear of missing out, and companies are moving really fast. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so true. So much is evolving so rapidly. It has been incredible to have you on the podcast today. As we wrap up this podcast, the last thing I would love to ask you about is, you've been recognized as a top EV industry power player, and you're obviously, you've been in a bunch of different publications in the EV and the AI space. I'm wondering, what advice would you give to young professionals that are kind of entering this new AI or EV space today?
Yeah. See, the one thing I learned is, it's very important to be very motivated by what you're doing, right? So if you have a mission, I think all of the ups and downs become very easy to handle, right? The second thing is, it's very important to be in the right space, right? So somebody said, hey, it's very important to be in the right boat versus how fast you are rowing, right? So pick the right space, right industry, right company to the extent possible versus, not just how hard you work. Third, like I also mentioned, find the right kind of people, right, to work with. That's been the most important, most helpful thing to read. I used to advise people, read hundreds of pages a day as much as you can. I have done that. It has benefited me tremendously. So, learn across disciplines. And then ultimately, the world is changing. And I think just, the having a growth mindset, things are going to change. Be open to the fact that the way we live, work, study, everything is going to change. So if you're not afraid of change, if you're open to accepting a new reality, if you will, I think a lot of that is going to be helpful. I mean, and obviously, do not forget to learn as much as possible about AI. I mean, we've spent a lot of time and focus and energy in the last few decades on software. I think it's time, right from K-12, we need to start focusing on an AI curriculum. And I hope see a lot more work and advancements and activity in that space.
Amazing. I think that's some incredible advice. As we wrap up here, I'm wondering if people want to connect with you or find out, perhaps they want to try App
Orchid, yeah.
App Orchid. Yeah, sorry, blanked on the name there for a second. What's the best place for them to find that or connect with you?
So I am always, I've benefited generously from advice and help I've gotten from people, and I'm more than willing to, pay back. So somebody has questions about EVs, AI, just want to show, please reach out to me. On LinkedIn would be the best place, right? Prashant Gulati, that's Prashant, last name Gulati, Gulati. And you can go on apporchid.com, that's apporchid.com. So to learn more about the company, and you can reach out to me and I'll help you navigate to the best possible.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on today. To the listener, I'll leave a link to App Orchid in the show notes so you can find it there as well. Thank you so much for coming on. As I mentioned to the listener, thank you for tuning into the AI Chat podcast. Make sure to rate us wherever you get your podcasts and have a fantastic rest of your day.
You're doing